Here with us now for more insight is former Europe, Africa, and Middle East editor at the Associated Press, Dan Perry. Dan, welcome back.
Hello, thank you.
First, I heard the news of the Easter ceasefire yesterday. What was your reaction? What were your thoughts? Were you surprised at all when Putin declared this 30-hour truce?
No, not at all. I mean, even as an attempt to create an impression, it's very flimsy. A 30-hour ceasefire for the holiday is maybe a little bit of a boost for his own troops, but it's not a change in policy. What's on the table and being required by the U.S. is a 30-day ceasefire, not 30 hours. And, you know, you don't get far in life predicting the actions of maniacal dictators, but it wouldn't surprise me terribly if Putin did agree to an extension and did make it more of a real thing, because he has every interest in engaging Trump, who presents him with the very real possibility of the U.S. helping him engineer terms that he can present to the Russian people and to the hardliners within his own government as something of a victory.
We have seen Russia and Ukraine swapping prisoners of war. I saw that yesterday, hundreds of men from both sides going back to their respective countries. In the largest prisoner exchange since the invasion 3 years ago, what's the strategy behind this and, of course, releasing those images that we're seeing now?
Well, I think they want to appear reasonable. They want to appear like they're doing normative things that a normal country might do while at war, and that would include, of course, prisoner exchanges. There's also an element, not an overpowering element, but an element of the need to appease, to a degree, Russian public opinion. Putin is a dictator, and his elections are a sham, but he doesn't want the unpopularity of the war to get totally out of hand. And there is dissatisfaction within the Russian body politic about the war going on forever and not achieving significant results on the battlefield, even if they support the goals. So that is why I sense that even though Putin maybe is playing five-dimensional chess and has designs on the Baltics and the eventual incorporation of all of Ukraine, in the election of Trump, which unbelievably is a U.S. president that prefers Putin to not only to Ukraine, but also to America's democratic allies in Europe, that's a tool in Putin's arsenal, and he has some incentive in creating the impression through these prisoner exchanges, through unilaterally declared very brief ceasefires, that he is willing to engage in a diplomatic process.
Dan, I want to ask you about multiple reports that President Trump might recognize the Crimea region, but for Russia. How could a future peace deal between Russia and Ukraine happen if that does move forward?
Well, it would involve compelling Ukraine to accept the loss of 15 to 20% of its territory. Remember, the Crimea is separated from Russia proper by the four provinces that Putin annexed and is basically fighting to control. And those are Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. The implication is that if they accept Crimea as Russian, they would also accept the land bridge through those four provinces, and that would mean essentially finding a way to force Ukraine to accept that Russia has taken the southeast of its country, which is not just any area. It is strategic because it's the Black Sea ports. It's an area that contains many of the minerals, actually, that Trump himself is trying to take from Ukraine in the famous shakedown of February. So it's a complex maneuver. For Ukraine to agree to this would be tough, and they would obviously demand security guarantees. They would demand all kinds of compensation. I would expect, if not in the form of NATO membership, which in another prize to Putin, Trump is taking off the table.
Right.
I would expect membership in the EU, some sort of fast track in that regard.
Dan, let's turn to Israel. You've known Benjamin Netanyahu since 1988. You two go back. Yesterday, he said the fight will continue in the war against Hamas. What does that statement tell you about the possibility of reaching a peace deal?
A peace deal between Israel and Hamas is not possible. But look, there are two ways to view this. One is that Netanyahu simply has decided that he will preserve his coalition come what may, and he knows that if he ends the war on Hamas's terms, leaving Hamas in power, his government falls. And basically, he won't allow it at almost any cost, including sacrificing the hostages and who knows how many more Israeli soldiers and lives of many Palestinians. The other, less cynical narrative would be that when Netanyahu says, I can't leave Hamas in power, that is not an unsustainable position, given Hamas has said, if we stay in power, we're going to do October 7th again and again. So these two narratives seem to contradict. One is a little bit cynical about Netanyahu, The other attaches to the understandable desire of most Israelis to be rid of Hamas. I believe that is also the desire of most Palestinians.
Yeah.
Although they contradict, I think they're both true at the same time.
We've already seen some protests in Gaza against Hamas, something I'd never seen before in decades, truly. Dan Perry from the Associated Press, always appreciate your expertise. Thank you, Dan, and happy Easter.